You're watching Ordinary Women, Extraordinary Wealth. We interview successful business leaders and entrepreneurs to learn about their journeys and go over the various forms of wealth they've been able to achieve. You'll also learn how to put your money to work and use your money to enjoy life today without stealing from tomorrow. And now, your host, Marcy Predmore McPhee.
Welcome, David, to Ordinary Women, Extraordinary Wealth. It's so nice to have you back. I love chatting with you. And today's topic, I think, is going to resonate with so many people because it truly is from my heart. And it's about ordinary women or men that have self-confidence issues. And I don't know about you, but growing up, I've had messages that have been planted in my brain that actually trip me up just a little bit in my confidence. Even to this very day, I have to really make an effort not to have the messages mess with who I am today. Do you ever have that problem?
You know, I think I do in some ways. But I think they're totally different than what you might experience. And I think that my own things would be kind of along the lines of almost pressure from upbringing. Like, I'm 33 years old and, you know, I'm not in a serious relationship. I'm not married. I don't have kids. Like, am I weird? Am I normal? Like, you know, that it kind of a vibe sometimes, maybe a little bit. But in terms of, I think what a lot of women face, especially in the context of wealth or success, is these internal and even external, like from social or from society, from upbringing, messages of needing to have a certain amount of academic credentials or a certain amount of industry experience. And if they don't have those things, or they don't have that particular experience, or if they step away for a few years, for example, a lot of women, especially when they have young children, will for a couple of years and try to bounce back. And you know, women struggle right at that career returning phase as well. I don't know. There's a lot of folks who have self-confidence, but I think women's challenges are particularly unique.
And, you know, really, I do believe that's true. I've been in the insurance industry for 20 plus years, and it's a man's world. So there's so much outside influences. There's so much mental chatter that even comes with that I really had to overcome just some of those messages. And one of the messages that really resonates or came through hard for me, especially in my 30s, we won't talk about my age today, but in my 30s, I felt like it was my physical appearance and really the confidence of who I was in the front of the room. I didn't feel like I was pretty enough. I didn't feel like I was strong enough, smart enough to even be an entrepreneurial woman. So that was a huge hurdle for me to overcome. And
Marcy, I'm going to make fun of you a little bit here. You know, we've been working on the podcast cover art, and obviously you recently took some new photos, some new headshots, so that we could incorporate that in everything. And the podcast cover art turned out, I think, amazing. And you're almost too pretty. I mean, it's intimidating. I think we're trying to reach out to ordinary women in our audience, and they're going to look at the cover art and they'll be like, oh my God, she's so beautiful. She has it so put together. Like, of course she's perfect. You know, how is she why should I listen to this? I'm an ordinary woman.
And you know what? That's one of the best compliments I think I've ever had. So thank you, David, for that one. And yes, I have an amazing headshot artist who really can make you look pretty amazing. So
you look great over the Zoom video. It's there naturally, and he's just pulling it out in the photos. I mean, you're naturally an incredibly beautiful woman.
You bet. And that's where I really have to stand firm in my confidence today. But David, thank you so much for that, because I think so many women, we worry about what people think. I mean, that's really one of our biggest hurdles again today in the entrepreneurial and the business world, is we worry about what other people think of us. And if we are speakers, if we are consultants, mentors, we have to be confident. We have to be in front of people and really believe that we have something to offer. And I really wanted to talk a little bit more about just the intimidation that women feel. And I know you were raised by a single mom. And so tell me just a little bit about maybe some of the insecurities that you observed or not.
And so with my mom in particular, she was South Korean.
Yes.
And she grew up in 60s South Korea, so very poor. She in that country in that time, girls were not encouraged to go to school, and she had home and domestic responsibilities with other children and things like that. And so she only completed up to essentially junior high. She never made it past the 8th grade, is how she would always tell it to me.
Right.
And she was not a native English speaker. She was English as a second language. And when I grew up, her English, because she was a single mom and I spoke Korean, her English deteriorated further from when she was married to my father. And so I remember being small child, elementary school, 1st, 2nd grade.
Yep.
And I mean, cable companies are notorious for this, but the bill would be wrong. She knew that she signed up for cable to have this and this, and that's what was told what the bill would be when she signed up. And then when she went to go make that payment, the bill was, $15 or $20 more. And she wasn't going to accept it. She's like, I don't care if I have only had a junior high education and I can't speak English, properly. This bill is wrong and you need to understand it and you need to fix it. And she was able to, in that kind of way, assert herself despite not being someone who, not being a lofty, not being a school professor or, anything like that.
Yes. And, my background is so similar in many ways. Yes, culturally, maybe not, but my grandparents on both sides, and I'm going to just take a snippet from one grandmother to the other grandmother, but I always observed my mom's mother, and she was a divorced woman in the day that really wasn't looked upon. But you know what? She did not have a very high education. But the one thing I observed, and I feel so grateful for that gift, is her fortitude. And she was going to be a successful woman. And she came across having that energy of success, even though I know it was quite the journey for her, quite the climb to get where she needed to get to achieve. And then my other grandmother, we're from very ordinary families. My grandfather was a gravedigger, and my grandmother stayed home and was a homemaker. And back then, I loved going to her home because there were homemade noodles draped all over the kitchen. There was homemade pies. But you know what? She didn't have to fight for that same achievement. And so I got really the flavor of both. And I knew in my heart, even as a young child, as a young woman back then, that I wanted to achieve something. I wanted to be somebody. So that was really, just thinking of cultural, of tradition. And then when I did get to be in my early 30s, I became a single mom. And I knew I had to really work hard at, again, the confidence, because I was in an industry, in a world where it was confusing, it was hard, and sometimes it was rejecting. And I am so excited that I actually got to learn that message, I guess, if you want to put it that way. So I had to really go with my instincts, and I had to grow me. I had to change that paradigm, is the word I use today, that mental message, so I didn't have the chatter. And let me ask you a quick question about being assertive. And this is just something that, again, I grew up with. But if you got on an airplane and someone wanted your seat, or you go out to dinner and your meal wasn't what you ordered, or something to do with your business, would you be assertive enough to say something to that person, or would you just let it slide?
I'm pretty sure that I would assert myself in most situations if I felt like I was being wronged. If it's not an inconvenience for me, and someone, asked me, for example, the airplane seat moving thing, if someone had asked me to move, like if I was in the window seat and they were in the aisles or the middle seat and they just wanted to swap with me, I'd be like, no. But let's say, a mother with her child was asking to move a different, and I would end up in a middle seat, I don't want the mother and her child to be separated. Yeah, I'll swap with you. That's fine.
Yeah.
That's okay. And in reverse, if I needed to sit with a friend and we got separated, I would not hesitate to ask somebody, hey, are you alone? Would you mind swapping with my friend and I so we can sit together? Kind of a thing. I wouldn't have a problem doing that. Restaurants, yeah, if they get it wrong, I'll tell them. I might or might not make them change it. Probably not make them change it, but I would at least tell them.
Yeah, just at least be aware. And I have to say, up until just now, I would never say anything. I would just let it slide.
How did that affect you and your career when you would those are just social examples, but like career examples,
career examples, I lost business. I lost business. I mean, I felt like I was really good at what I did and what I do today, but I would lose business. And I can tell you a few accounts that I would lose by not standing my ground.
What's an example of when you would just self-critiquing, what could you have done in particular with assertiveness that would have maybe changed the outcome?
Well, assertive, like when my competition would come in and share something, maybe what looked new and shiny, or something that maybe I couldn't offer, I needed to stand my ground and say, I can do exactly that, or I do exactly that. But I wasn't confident enough in saying to that company that I had insured all of these years, I can do the same job. Now, if you give me the chance, or you've seen how I do business, then I would retain the business, but I didn't. And I didn't choose to fight that battle. And it really did hurt me in the long run. And that's where I just continue to know that part of learning to be assertive is growing me.
And so what do you have any particular, I use the word action item, or any particular rituals or self-thinking processes, or even, conversation with other people, mentors, leaders, peers, spouses, etc. What avenues did you incorporate into your own journey to help you develop the self-confidence to be assertive?
Yes, and there's so many tools, and one of the very first tools is I love to be outside, and so whenever I would run, which was most of the time every morning, I would put a message either in my headphones back then or on my phone today, and I really wanted to hear a message of growth for me. The other thing is books. I'm not a super strong reader, but one of the things that I've really enjoyed, especially in the last 3 to 5 years, is just getting to know a book, its author, and why they wrote it. And so to me, it's books and also events. I really love connecting with people. I love hearing their journey. I love hearing their growth journey, because you know what? If you don't fail, you don't know if you can ever succeed. And so for me, it was just really the tools of physical movement, reading, educating, resources around me. And again, one of my biggest tool would be a mentor. I have several mentors, and some of them are the wisest older women that have guided me along the way, my mother being one, and then I could mention many more.
You really hit it from multiple perspectives. I heard the body,
yes,
with the activity, the exercise, and the ritual of doing that.
Yes.
And I heard the mind,
yes,
with the education and books. And then kind of with the events and social aspect, it's kind of, that's maybe spirit, mind, body, spirit. You're really hitting all the things. And what I also heard you say there was that you were really identifying opportunities that played to your strengths,
Yes.
that you knew that you would win at, because not only did you deserve to win there, but it was joyful for you to win in that context of meeting people at events versus going and competing head to head with other professionals, other folks in the industry. That's not your strength, and you're not going to dominate someone else who's very assertive, and you're not going to try to dominate that. You're going to say, all right, that's all yours. Sucks, but okay, I'll move on and win over here instead.
Right. And, I got the privilege of seeing Zig Ziglar many, many years ago. But one of the things that he said has resonated to me this day, and I truly believe it. And that's why I like the face-to-face connectivity, and how it grows me is the more you help other people get what they need and want, the abundance really flows to each one of us. It's not just for that person or just for you. It's actually the nature of how connectivity works. So for me, the reason that I love that piece is it grows my confidence.
And it ties to, I think, one of the other core precepts that we have, both at Private Banking Concepts and with our message with Ordinary Women Extraordinary Wealth, and that is, wealth follows value, or money follows value. And so as long as there's value that you have, and you may not have discovered it, and you might still need to grow it, but when you can provide value to society, to the world, to your community, then wealth, money, success will will flow from that.
Right. And it truly does just unfold. And David, it's just awesome how you brought that in. So we talk about here at Ordinary Women Extraordinary Wealth, we talk about wealth. We talk about money. We talk about extraordinary in that journey. And one of the quotes, again, that I've been writing down with my affirmation is, no person can become rich without enriching others. But really, it doesn't have anything to do with money per se, but that could be the outcome. That's what we're all seeking, is success and wealth. And the more wealth you have, the more you can help others. So that would probably be my response there.
And it becomes a virtuous cycle in that context.
Absolutely.
Because by enriching others, whether that's teaching them something or providing value in some other way.
Yes. And
you're enriching them, and the wealth is following the value, or the money is following the value that you're providing. So you acquire more money. And then as you acquire more money, you're able to give more freely and more and contribute in to your community and your family and everyone else in more impactful and meaningful ways, which, again, circles back.
And, that just brought something to mind, is one of my mentors, and he's been my mentor for about 4 years now. But one of my mentors says to me, and he didn't say it directly to me, but he really wanted me to know that, it just lost my train of thought right then. He really
circling back.
Yeah. Circling back. So basically, he wanted me to know that I am worthy. I am, that my journey that I am on is just as important as your journey, or as the woman that's walking next to me or shopping next to me, that our journeys are all important, and we all come from ordinary and we work to extraordinary.
I heard you talk about affirmations, and I know that you do them, and you've mentioned, and we've talked about them before, but it just made me curious. When did you kind of start that type of activity? How did you identify that was a need that you wanted to, satisfy with the affirmations, and how has that had an impact on you since you've started doing it.
And really, that's great, because really where it truly started was years ago, and I'm going to say in the early 2000s, is I was enlightened with a dream board. Never had heard of it, didn't really even know what a dream board was. And then as I went to more events and more networking and more workshops, people started doing dream boards. So I not only have a dream board, but we have a dream wall in our home where we put everything we want to come to pass, and then we date it when we're done. And then the affirmation is, again, my mentor has me write every day with my right hand and my non-dominant hand, my affirmation. So I wake up in the morning and I write my affirmation 10 times. At night, I do the same, because the more you implant that new message, then the more you become stronger and stronger and stronger in the journey, and really in self-confidence.
So the dream board, that makes perfect sense. And there's different tools that people can use to achieve the same function. I think, for me, I like to do a 3-year and a 5-year goal setting. Yeah. By this time I will have achieved this. By year 5 from today, I will have bought, an RV. I will have done, whatever it is. Because for me, going on the RV is a big deal. 2 years away. Anyway.
That's a good goal.
As that, that's my model that I've done similar or applied similar ideas as what you talked about with the dream board. I like the, the physical aspect of the dream board and the ritual of writing it. And that creates different kinds of anchors in your mind. I think that help reinforce and strengthen it versus what I've done. So that sounds like it's actually a really helpful and valuable tool.
It really is. And you have to put emotion to that dream. So even though I'm writing the words down and then I write with my non-dominant hand, it sends a message to my brain of what I want. But you also have to put emotion or energy to that message. So as you know, a lot of times in our workshops, Tim will actually do what we call muscle testing. And again, I had never heard of this, but muscle testing is actually energy in your body that gives you strength when things are positive, and pretty negative, it makes you weak. So as we learned the energy, you have to begin to incorporate the energy around the affirmation if you really want that to come to pass. And so for me, I love energy. I love excitement. And so I try and encompass that emotion when I am verbally saying or writing my affirmation.
And that follows from, modern psychological or psychology principles.
Yeah.
Right. If you're going to go in front of a crowd and be a public speaker, they say, do a big, power stance, hands on the hips, chest out, right before you go on stage. And that's going to relay to the audience, another level of confidence. Because you did the confident pose, your body will chemically respond by making you more confident on stage. And in the same way that you're describing with the energy of reinforcing your affirmations, if you just do it mundanely and, as a chore, and you don't really believe that it's going to come to pass, and you're just doing this because you heard it on a podcast or in a book or in some conference, that doesn't mean it's likely to happen, and it isn't a useful tool in that context.
Right.
You really have to use the tool correctly, I guess. Correctly and habitually. I mean, consistently.
Consistently. And one of the things, again, that right when you said that word, the mentor's voice comes into my mind: repetition, repetition, repetition. If you continue to do those things long enough, then they will come to pass. And it might not always look like exactly the picture we have in our mind, but it will come to pass. And if you all out there listening can even stop for just a minute and think about something that you really, really wanted. And you thought about it and got excited about it like it was Christmas morning. Do you have it today? You probably do. So that really is just, to me, it's unwrapping the gift. And think about Christmas morning, but it's unwrapping that gift of achievement. So bringing this back into self-confidence is the stronger you become and the more confident you become, then you begin to shine from the front. You can be that mentor. You can be that guide. I climbed a mountain, and I've shared with many of you, but I climbed a mountain a few years ago, and I knew that I couldn't achieve the summit without my guide. So just think of your mentors and your guides and the books that you read as a guide, and just know that that's how you're going to build your self-confidence, by really following somebody who has been where you are today, but it has achieved what you want to achieve. And I think that's the lesson that if I bring my grandmothers back into this conversation, is that's what I saw. I saw them sharing with me their lives of where we started in an ordinary life to becoming extraordinary today. So that's self-confidence for me and how it's really grown me. The other thing that I just really wanted to bring up really quick, when we talk about energy, and again, I mentioned this earlier, but no person can become rich without enriching others. David, for the longest time, the word rich was a connotation for me that actually said greed, pride, you didn't get it honestly. And I really had to pluck out the seed that was planted and replant a seed of richness. Doesn't have to be just dollars. Richness is you and I right now talking, is us talking to an audience of people who have actually walked the same journey that you and I have walked. Because what we're sharing is enriching them, and what they're sharing back with me, or you sharing with me, enriches my life. And as my life enriches, my business does better, my finances do better. And at Private Banking Concept, which is the company that my husband and I, as you well know, run, we really want people to understand that it's changing here before it can change in your relationships, in your pocketbook. But you really have to change the message or the paradigm. So that is really, if I can impart anything, it's just, I want to be as honest as possible with our audience and just help them to know that I'm just as ordinary as you, but I'm choosing to become extraordinary. And I just love sharing these types of messages because, David, you grew up in a different part of the world than I did. You have different traditions around money, as a matter of fact. You and I have talked about that. For me, sometimes it's the spirit of lack. I felt like I didn't have enough. Single mom. You grew up with a single mom. Sometimes when you're rowing your own boat, moms out there, I'm right there with you. I had to row. I had to maintain the boat. I had to paint the boat, afford the boat on my own.
Recently here in Colorado, we've had some wildfires.
Yes.
Cameron Peak Fire, in fact, was one of the biggest, if not the biggest, in Colorado recorded in history.
Yes.
And it came to within a few miles of my house. In fact, between that fire and the other fire, it affected you up in Estes Park as well.
Yes.
But when I was evacuated, I went to stay with a friend of mine. She's also a military veteran, single mom. And she's got an older son who's 16 and a pair of twins who are 4. And they're just the cutest things, by the way. They're amazing. But she's a single mom, and with all of these things happening and this, living with her for a week, it just blew my mind. I was like, I'm exhausted watching you.
Yeah.
Literally all of the things that you're having to do, from taking business calls to spitting out emails to chasing down your 16-year-old to get his homework done, to chasing down your 4-year-olds to get dressed and then showered and then brush their teeth and then, eat a meal. Like, it takes forever for 4-year-olds to eat. Who knew? Apparently all the moms out there probably know that, but I'm like,
eat your food, eat those veggies.
And so, and all of that happening, simultaneously while thinking about making sure that there's enough groceries, or, I'm out of milk, or whatever. Yeah. Juggling appointments. I can't even, I can't keep up with my snail mail. And here she is, doing all of that at the same time.
Yeah. And
it's just like, oh my God, that's crazy. And I think, in some ways, tying that back to kind of this idea of self-confidence, women who find themselves in that position also have I can say in her case, like, she has to continually try to self-reinforce that she's capable, she's competent, because she is, use the word attacked, but she is, fending off so much at the same time, and she's not necessarily performing at her peak. You know what I mean? So if she gets a little bit short with her twins for not eating quickly, that can be something that then reinforces a negative spiral, or, and it's hard to maintain momentum on wins to keep carrying forward, because, the kid's father did something crappy and didn't, tell her or whatever. And so that takes her off the role she was on. Those kinds of things. There's so much that happens in ordinary women's lives that are even hard for me as a dude to understand.
And hey, I have to do a quick shout out to the ladies that are listening to this podcast, because when you hear the adage that we can multitask and do everything all at the same time, it's because many times, especially if you're a single mom, you have to. And at the same time you're multitasking, you also have to pay attention to you. And that is a very fine line. So I really appreciate that story, David, because I really feel like she is truly that ordinary woman that most of us are growing into her extraordinary, because some days you just need your kids to eat their dinner, get their baths, go to bed so you can have some time. And in self-confidence, when you get the message, the outside chatter, the outside influence of, oh gosh, you're not giving them enough quality, or they should have a bath every night, or they should have this, or they should have eaten that. And so I really appreciate that story, because that resonates with me well, rearing my son. And just some of the mixed messages that I got. Was I a good mom or not a good mom? Trying to be an entrepreneur at the same time.
That actually makes me think of stories of how there were times where I felt like I was almost teaching my mom how to be a mom, because she either had some cultural beliefs from growing up in Korea that either didn't integrate well into American society, or she would hear something from someone. For example, a common idea in the 80s and 90s for immigrant families was that you should speak English at home so that your child wouldn't fall behind his or her peers at school by speaking Spanish or Korean or Chinese or whatever language it would have been at home, that if you spoke that at home, they would fall behind in English at school.
Right.
And actually, the reverse is true. If you speak broken English to your child at home, they're more likely to fall behind in school, because they won't know what the correct way to say things is. Whereas if you spoke Spanish at home and English at school, then they'd be bilingual growing up, which is fantastic. And they would learn English properly, and then they would learn Spanish from you. And so I as a small child, unintentionally, I kind of forced my mom to speak Korean to me because her English was so bad and I couldn't tolerate it. And I knew I was doing fine in school. And whatever she was hearing from other people about, your kid is going to do poor in English in school if you don't speak English at home, I told her she was wrong. My English grades are fine. I'm smarter than the rest of my classmates in English. I say smarter, but I was doing as well or better than my peers in English in classes. So I didn't need her to try to speak English to me because it was not going to be good.
Right.
And she learned that as she went along. And, that's something that as children, as, younger folks, maybe with parents, we have to be empathetic to their situation as well and realize they're doing this for the first time too, maybe, or, for the first time for you anyway.
And it's true. It's true that, again, we'll call out some single moms here, but when you have children, you truly are growing together. It's not, even though you need to stay the parent, you truly are growing together. So I can really relate to where your mom was coming from, because we have to look to you as our children also to maybe give us, what does that look like on their side? And it just helps us see their picture. And then again, as the whole self-confidence comes to play, as the parent, you want to impart the self-confidence to your kids. You want to really embed that message that no matter if it takes them forever to eat their dinner, they did a great job eating their dinner. Or if they got their homework done, they got their homework done. And that is amazing. They just need to take the very next step in completing whatever it is they do. So we get to be the student and the teacher in life, which I think really that's a great way to look at it. Is a very dear friend of mine told me years ago, if you're not growing, you're dying. And you know what? If you think about that in that energy, in that nature aspect of what you and I just shared, it's the truth. If you just are stagnant, you become stagnant. So we moms need our children to kind of keep us growing. And then we need ourselves and our education, our resources, our tools to keep us sharp, to help us to really grow into that entrepreneurial lifestyle that we really want to achieve. So I love that.
Yeah. And for women who are listening to this, especially if you're a single parent, but especially for it applies to, I think, all parents, but particularly for single parents, because you don't have a partner to bounce ideas off of.
Right.
There's a gap in self-confidence in your parenting. And as we talk about extraordinary, we use the word wealth because we view wealth to mean, wealth in your relationships, wealth in your personal development, wealth, of course, in your finances.
Absolutely. And
your lifestyle. But for all of those things, what we really mean is extraordinary lives. Maybe we'll rename the show. I don't know. And so what lessons should, or what, not even lessons, maybe practices, what things should women, single moms, parents in general, avoid? And this applies not just to parenting, and it would apply in other contexts, but what things should they avoid or prevent to allow from happening, in terms of things that could sabotage their self-confidence, and how they're raising their children, and how their children are going to be okay, and they're resilient. Because I think there's a huge thing. I mean, not having any kids, but knowing a lot of folks who have kids in my peer group, that's a recurring theme. Yeah. That moms, new moms, older moms, everybody has, like, did I do it right?
Yes.
Is this going to be okay? Is this going to affect him or her, my son or daughter, 10 years from now, because I said she was dumb for asking that question today? You know what I mean? No. You shouldn't say things like that to your kid. But if you did, you made mistakes, you know what? Be honest with your child and grow together, and actually he or she will probably be fine in the long run. Anyway, I'm kind of lost on a tangent. What things can folks do to avoid that from becoming a negative spiral, or to build positive momentum?
Well, even as we talk about spiraling or losing the momentum, is, we can make it be families. We can have it be entrepreneurial. We can have it be your business. We can have it be whatever it is you want. But again, the real message that I just want to get across here is we got into the single parenting, but you still have to grow you. You still have to take care of you. So the downfall that I'll say is a downfall, but it's also the upside, is failure. it's okay. It's okay to fail, because when you fail, you succeed. You know that instead of turning left, you needed to turn right. So course correct. Turn right. And
that's a resilience thing, because
yeah,
I'm thinking of Edison with the 1,000+ different attempts at filaments. I'm thinking of
yeah,
the tech industry, Silicon Valley, fail fast,
yes.
find out what doesn't work as quickly as possible so you can drop it and move on.
Right, right. And you know what? I have been in the insurance and financial industry for, as I said, 20 plus years. And there's a lot of times where I should have taken a right and I took a left. But I really just had to, again, be assertive enough, be confident enough, learn to be confident enough to take the next step. And it's just what you're saying. I just want to encourage people is you might want to celebrate the failures.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And there's resources out there. And, whether it is about parenting or whether it's more along the lines of wealth and wealth creation, wealth growth, career success, mentors,
right.
Various types of resources, both free and, paid coaching, for example. There's a lot of resources that are out there, and depending on what your situation is, some might not be totally accessible right now. If you're not able to hire a lifestyle coach, that's okay. You don't need a business coach to be successful. Those are just extra resources to take you to another level. What are some of the things that people can do to find those resources, those tools? I know that you reference a lot of books. Obviously, we're doing a podcast. We're hoping to reach an audience here. There's an incredible library of resources throughout the internet. YouTube is actually a fantastic resource. What are some things that you recommend folks to do?
You bet. And that's really, David, you just hit it. So, we all have come through this lifestyle recently called COVID-19. We've had to learn technology. We've had to learn how to use technology differently. So for me, even though it felt like the sky is falling, there's been so much opportunity because the tools that I use are sometimes not face to face. One of my mentors says, your mentor doesn't even have to be alive. He can be 2,000 years old. He or she can be 100 years old. There could be a book. There could be something. So a mentor doesn't necessarily have to be a physical presence. But for me, I like to search that out. And yes, it does. You get into the financial side when you begin to need that expertise from somebody who has been where you are and achieved what you want to achieve. So I would say right now, there are many opportunities. Podcasts are amazing. I'm just now, as you all know and see, just getting involved with podcasts because I want to relate with you. I want to relate with the people that I'm listening to. YouTubes are fantastic. I really enjoy positive YouTubes. I love history, so I love delving into how did, for instance, one of the books, I love the book of Ruth in the Bible, and I really love to read her journey in her success. She didn't leave anyone. She was loyal. Her integrity was strong. So again, it doesn't have to be someone right in front of you or cost you money. But again, when you give a little bit more of yourself, and let's say you pay for it, you might get a little bit more out of it. So books are so important. And you know what? As a matter of fact, it's just right here with me. But this is one of the books that I'm reading right now. It's Price Pritchett's U Squared. And I love this book because some of you busy women out there or busy people out there, if you just read one page, I think there's only maybe 30 pages in it, but if you just read a page a day, it might take you 10 minutes to read that, but let that resonate. Let that really soak in and sink in. So it doesn't have to be an expensive mentor journey. but there's a lot of opportunity out there.
And I love your, we reiterated a few times. It's you're on a journey, and you know that other people have been on a journey, and they've reached their destination. They've got to where you want to get to.
Yep.
And those are really the types of people you want to connect with. You obviously don't want to, and this is just, advice from me, I guess, for whatever that's worth, right? You don't want to come out with your hands out. Hey, will you mentor me, please?
Absolutely.
That's not necessarily the best way to find or connect with mentors. Sometimes it'll work. And obviously when there's a wider generational gap, I think,
yes,
humans tend to want to leave something behind as they get older. And so they are seeking good mentees, and that might work. I mean, it probably has worked for a lot of people, but really what will help cement that mentor-mentee relationship is, as the mentee, how can you find a way to provide value to your mentor? And then it becomes more of a like exchange where you provide value for them in whatever way they need, and it can be anything. And in return, you learn from them, and they help there to guide you on your journey and show you what the path looks like and tell you what traps to avoid and all those types of things.
Yes.
And having that mentor really just, I think, gives people an opportunity to take to the next level much more quickly than if they tried to do everything on their own. So when we talk about self-confidence, it's also the confidence to understand and believe that you don't have to know everything. And there are people out there who can help you, and you have to be confident in yourself enough to realize that by needing help, you're not inferior.
Oh,
and you're not and to go and to accept that help doesn't put you below them in a value sense. One of the challenges that I think we have as a society, and this goes to this value of transparency that I have, is people are so tied to that their personal worth is tied to their job, their income,
yes,
or even their net worth. And you know what? Your value as a human being isn't a dollar figure. It isn't tied to that dollar figure. Yeah. And there's different things that we have to do in insurance to make sure you're not worth more dead than alive. But fundamentally, like that isn't what you should be concerned about. And if you need help, you have to be confident enough to know that it's okay to ask for help, or it's okay to accept help if offered.
And really, there is no hierarchy in mentoring. You really want to search out a mentor that maybe resonates with you, but you can't expect that mentor to just give you what they have to offer. You do have to offer. The more you help other people get what they need and want, what that means is you're connecting what you both want. The mentor he or she really knows where you're coming from because they've been here. But they've also achieved where a lot of people now want their time and attention. So that's where you have to be willing to give of yourself, whether that be finance, whether that be time, whatever that looks like. You have to be willing to do that. And even to listen to a podcast or a YouTube, you have to whittle out the time to say, I'm going to grow me today. And
there's so many ways to integrate that. For me, I always tell folks I'm constantly listening to podcasts or audiobooks, sometimes for entertainment, but oftentimes self-development, education, history, biographies, and doing the dishes, chopping onions to make dinner, walking the dog, folding laundry, vacuuming. I got the noise canceling, so driving, obviously the commute, but with COVID, commutes have kind of gone away. But all of those times are just dead spaces that you can just find to integrate a little bit of self-development. And that's why I love the audio platform more so than even the written word.
You bet. And really, some of my mentors even go back to saying that way back in the day, before we had cell phones and before we had MP3 players or things that are mobile and easy, they would put a record player in the front seat of their car and listen to a record. So all the way back to Nightingale Conant, one of the biggest outlets for self-help back in the day, people were listening to records in the front seat of their car. Imagine that.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
The shocks weren't very good on those cars either. So you had probably lots of skipping and scratching.
So really today we just really wanted to encourage everyone to know that we all have self-confidence issues. And I just wanted to share some of mine. And I know David really wanted to just interact with me on the self-confidence episode because we want to encourage you to grow you. We want to encourage you to go from ordinary to absolutely extraordinary in the journey you're on. So I really want to thank you all today for just listening and being a part of this podcast and really giving me the support and the encouragement to take that next step. So if anything today resonated with you, I would just love it if you would reach out to us. And it's podcast@Private Banking Concepts. You can get a hold of my assistant, Janae, if you would like to even have a voice-to-voice conversation with me. We would just love to hear from you and really know that where David and I are coming from today, the reason that we're chatting with you today is to helping you know that we are right there in the ordinary category with you, encouraging you to become extraordinary. So thank you so much. And really, seek us out on social media and share that, subscribe to it, really help us to build this ordinary to extraordinary base and encourage each person that hears and listens.
So, Marcy, I just had an idea pop into my head. Obviously, we're a new podcast, and this will be one of the first 10 episodes, something like that, probably. We're going to need some reviews to build our audience base. And I know that there's what we want to do maybe is if you have any comments for us, give us some feedback, leave a review, shoot that review, the screenshot of that review on iTunes or Spotify or Stitcher, wherever you're listening, and shoot that over to us. And we're going to find some swag, and we'll announce the swag here in one of our episodes soon. And we'll send that swag out to you as a thank you for leaving a review for Ordinary Women, Extraordinary Wealth.
And David, thank you for joining me today. It's always just a pleasure talking.
You've been watching Ordinary Women, Extraordinary Wealth with Marcy Predmore McPhee. Be sure to drop us a comment if you enjoyed this episode, as we always love hearing from you. Let us know what you think by looking us up at ordinarywomenextraordinarywealth.com or on social media, where you can join our private group on Facebook called Ordinary Women Extraordinary Wealth. If you'd like to connect with Marcy on LinkedIn, you can find her by going to linkedin.com/in/Marcy-Predmore. Also, it would really mean so much to us if you would give this video a thumbs up. If you found this episode valuable, be sure to share it with your friends and colleagues. And remember, we publish new episodes every Wednesday, so be sure to subscribe. See you next week.